Hey, how's it going?
Good. Oh my God. I feel like Instagram Live, it's always tricky getting into it.
Yeah.
Uh, so I wanted to welcome you here. Hi, everyone. Well, everyone who is watching or going to be watching. We are here today with White Ribbon. My name is Cole Poplinski. I use they, them pronouns. My family is from Kibowek First Nation. I am Anishinaabe and Two Spirit, and I work at the Congress of Aboriginal People as a gender equity program coordinator. And this series of live events is on behalf of the National Youth Council and Pride Month, and we are partnering with various organizations to talk about various things that we will be discussing or that will lead into our workshops for our project. Everyone has a place in the circle, which will be starting in July, so stay tuned. Um, and today I am so happy that we are joined by Taylor from White Ribbon, and I will get you to introduce yourself and a little bit about your work that you do with White Ribbon. What is White Ribbon, and what is your role there?
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Really excited to be here. This is gonna be fun, I think. Yeah, it's gonna be a great conversation. I'm really excited for it. So my name's Taylor Dimitriov. I'm with White Ribbon Campaign, and so we're based in Ontario. A lot of work in Toronto, but I actually come from Treaty One territory, so in Winnipeg, Manitoba. So it's yeah, super cool to be here. Yeah, so my role there is I run a couple different projects, but one is the WRPrevent.ca project, which is whiteribbonprevent.ca, and it's all around preventing sexual exploitation and sex trafficking, and talking about healthy masculinities. So it's a perfect opportunity to chat about that today. But yeah, White Ribbon really we engage men and boys in the conversation, and I mean others as well for sure, in the conversation around preventing gender-based violence and talking about healthy masculinities and all that good stuff. So yeah, really excited to be here and excited to get the conversation going too. So thanks for having
Perfect.
me.
Thank you for being here. I'm so happy to be here with you. We have had conversations just one on one before, and they always feel really invigorating. We're both very passionate about the work we do. It's really important for me as a two spirit trans person that who was born. They thought I was a girl, and then I was like, no, just kidding. Too fabulous. But so, as someone who maybe presents a little bit more masculinely, how I can make sure that I'm not making the same mistakes that so many people can fall into just because of how colonialism and our societies are organized. So that brings me to our first question. If you could just give me your working definition, how do you define healthy masculinity? Like, what is that? That feels like it's been becoming a buzzword lately. But like, if someone's just coming in for the first time and don't know what that is, like, how would you explain that?
Yeah, great first question, I think, and I'd love to hear your perspective too of just like what you feeling is healthy masculinities is. But I mean, so masculinities, I think, and the healthier version of that is really just like it's it's however you identify, as on a, I guess, spectrum of being a man, or you don't have to identify as a man per se, but just like it being masculine in any capacity. And then just the healthier form of that is just, I think, giving, I don't know, I know I'm not giving a clear definition, but my definition anyways is just like giving a good space um for that expression, and for that, how do I want to say this, like being a man shouldn't, it's easier to talk about what being a man shouldn't look like, which I think
Hmm.
it shouldn't be like this super tough macho thing, which is like stereotypically like what we see in society. But being a man is the healthy masculinities, is really expressing emotions and caring for one another and looking out for one another and being able to talk about feelings and crying and all these really good things. So,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
what I'm like from what I'm hearing you say is like society kind of puts men in like most people in a box of what masculinity needs to look like when in reality we know from just knowing different people and different men is that masculinity can look like so many different ways, right?
right,
And there can be healthier, like anything, healthier ways to express that and more like toxic or toxic masculinity, which is another buzzword
yeah.
in today's standards. But yeah, so I think you kind of answered my next question was like, how do you embody healthy masculinity? How do we try as people who maybe present more masculine sometimes or feel like we are men? Um, how, and when I say feel like, I'm just talking about how gender is very much a social construct. And I want to acknowledge that some people are fluid and some people maybe go back and forth between genders. We talked about that in our last live event last week with CCGSD. If you haven't seen it, go check out our page. Shameless promo. Uh, yeah, so I think what you're saying is that like, masculinity can look like a bunch of different things, and there are maybe like some more positive and some more negative ways in that which that can be expressed. And I think you kind of talked about like emotional literacy or like teaching boys like that feelings are not bad or that the not the only valid feelings for boys are anger or rage or aggression because that's often the default is girls are taught to be soft and quiet and nurturing and boys are taught that you handle your problems in a different way. And so I think that brings us to like our next question, which is what is emotional intelligence and why do you think it's important we try to raise boys with that emotional intelligence in mind?
Right. So absolutely. So I think emotional intelligence is really being able to identify the huge range of emotions that, as humans and as people, like we can feel and experience. Um, and so when we're talking about healthy masculinity as well and teaching young boys and men these emotions, it's really modeling those emotions and showcasing that like it's okay to express those emotions. Um, so, and exactly like you said, I was going to talk about like the anger iceberg, which is just that, you know, typically men are supposed to only express like mad, sad, glad, right? And like you only have three emotions, and the top of that iceberg is just those emotions. But really, like it comes out as anger, but really we could be feeling nervous, we could be feeling apprehensive, like I don't know, all these emotions that we can be feeling. And so it's showing men that like we don't have to just be angry, we don't have to just be like, well, I'm mad,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm sad about it. It's really saying that like you're allowed to explore those other emotions and express them in a really healthy way. So I think for other folks that um that when we're talking about just masculinities in general, I think for modeling that behavior, it's increasing that emotional literacy by allowing folks to feel what they want to feel and how they need to feel, and allowing them to express that in different ways too.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. My one of my favorite tools to use, especially when talking with young ones, is the feelings wheel, which anyone watching, if you just Google a feelings wheel, it gives you names for a bunch of different feelings, and it's like really pretty and rainbow and in a little wheel, and it'll show you a pie piece that's like mad, and then you break it down further, and there's more breakdowns of what those feelings are, and so you can start at those mad, glad, sad feelings, but then maybe narrow it down to a more specific, oh, maybe I'm anxious. Like maybe this is how this feels in my body.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I just really love that imagery. It helps me, I know, like kind of visualize. So I want to point that out for anyone who also is a visual learner. I think also letting people be human and allow them to feel the wide range of emotions. And I think too, Western society, we have this fun thing. We love binaries. And so I think it's important when we also talk about feelings that we um, try not to polarize them as angry, sad. Those are bad feelings. Those are scary, bad feelings. Yes, they can feel uncomfortable in our bodies, but moving away from positive, negative language is really helpful for letting kiddos, especially, or like anyone who's learning emotional literacy. You can be any age, you don't have to be a young one. But will allow them to know that like, okay, like maybe it's uncomfortable in my body, this feeling of anger, you know, my body has a reaction when I'm angry. I can tense up and I can all these different physical features so I can feel that, but knowing that it's not like I'm going to be okay after,
Right.
you know?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think it goes for little ones, especially like when they're just learning emotions, that yeah, not saying like you said, like not saying that having anger or being upset is bad. It's just like allowing them to feel that and be like, you know what, like we're gonna work through it and I'll show you how to get through it too. For sure.
Exactly. And that opens the world of coping mechanisms and allows for way healthier communication. Um, so we've been having this conversation now for a couple of minutes, and I'm wondering how would I approach maybe the men or more masculine people in my life about these topics, about masculinities? How do I start that conversation without, like, you know, I don't want to come across as putting them on the defense. So how
Right.
do I open those conversations? How do we create a dialogue with boys and men?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. I think there's a term that's been kind of going around too, and it's calling people in.
Hmm.
It's very common. I think folks will hear like calling people out and saying like, "Hey, don't say that," and blah blah blah, blah right? But it's bringing people in, and it's showing folks how to respond to those things and how to talk about these things versus shaming them, right? And it's that
Hmm.
strength based approach, which is we use a lot. So I think it's like I use my job as a talking point, and I think for folks listening, you could even say like, I checked out this Instagram live, and that's your talking point to say like to start that conversation with folks, like just like even the men in my life, like I say like, hey, like yeah, so I work at this place called White Ribbon, and we talk about masculinity quite a bit, and like, what do you think about it? And it could just be a very casual conversation. It doesn't have to be
Hmm.
um, a big blowout either, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because I
I think.
think that's what I worry about being too intense for people. Because I'm a Cancer. I like to dig deep, have a meaningful conversation. But I know for me, I need like those tactics to be like, how can we just like keep it light and like just have a conversation? But like, I want to be a safe person for the men in my life to like be like, oh, I'm unpacking this thing. It's really complicated for me. Like, I'm having these feelings, and I want to be able to support them through that as well as much as they can support me back, you know, or vice versa.
Yeah,
So I,
I was just gonna say
my
quick
last,
too. Sorry, I
yeah,
was just gonna jump in just
yeah,
around like, I think it's also like, and it's tough, right? Because like you have to leave a little bit of space for like comments and statements that are gonna be problematic, and kind of working through that together. But I do want to just put this out into the world, like for folks that are having this conversation with folks, like do a little bit of self-care for yourself too, because like
hmm,
in some of these conversations that you have with people, like problematic stuff does pop up, and you're like, woof, that's hard to like just soak in. And so like, so it is leaving that space for folks to say some of those things, work through it together, but also putting some work back on those folks too, just to be like, like do a little bit of your own research too, and then take
hmm,
care of yourself as well. I think it's a
yeah.
process.
Oh, for sure. I think it's so easy to like come and watch an Instagram live where two people are like talking about all these like big concepts or like big, but there's so much more nuance in reality. Like it's really easy to think about these in like a 2D way, but yeah, and I think it's really good. I think to like self-care afterwards or during, and setting up boundaries. If an issue persists, like for example, I'll use myself as an example. If someone is not understanding my pronouns, I use they them pronouns, and I've asked them to try and I've asked them to try, and uh, they're just not, it's not that they're not getting it or that they make up mistake every once in a while. It's that they're actively not, like, don't care. Maybe then I need to set a boundary around that, right? So the same thing goes for all of this. So my last question of the day is, and this is a banger. If you could talk to your younger self as like a young boy, what would you want him to know about gender in general, or about like how he's going to grow up, or any of those light airy topics?
Yeah, totally. That's such a great question, and it's a tough one because, I like, okay, maybe I'll just start with what I'd want to say, and what I'd want to say
Hmm.
is like is be who you want to be and feel. Don't be afraid to feel things and express them, and and reach out for supports if you need them. Um, so I think that's like a top of like what I just very quick, like if I had a 2 second statement there. But like, when I think about like when I was growing up too, like not that not that this, the things that we're talking about didn't exist, because they for sure existed. Um, it was just so much harder to talk about, growing up. And so I think I would also tell myself to like to just leave space and show kindness for folks, and be that support like for others, and try to be an ally, and like just listen and support others, because I think there was lots of folks that were going through. I mean, everyone's going through something, and
Hmm.
and growing up there was a lot of problematic stuff, because I wanted to swear there, but there's a lot of problematic stuff that which it happens, and like as you kind of get roped into like
Hmm.
group culture
Mentality.
mentality,
Yeah.
exactly, and it's super problematic. And so I think another thing that I'd like to say is don't be afraid to stand up for folks, and not join that group mentality, because it's easy to, you know
Hmm.
make fun of the kid that stands out, and that's super not right. And it's they're not standing out, they're being themselves, and we want everyone to feel comfortable being themselves, and that's what it's all about. And so I think, once again, when we talk about healthy masculinities, it's also just being an ally, but see, there's so much to this too. It's not being a voice for people, because sometimes people need to be their own voice, but sometimes also just standing next to a person, and saying like,
Hmm.
hey, like, I got you, and I'll listen with you, and I'll stand with you, and whatever you need me to do. um
Yeah.
yeah.
That's really so beautiful. I like got swept up in the moment. I'm like picturing it and was like kind of getting tearful,
Yeah.
which is like ridiculous.
No, it's
But I'm
awesome.
gonna be healthy masculinity, and just let myself feel. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you so much for this conversation. I think it's definitely been really enjoyable for me, and I feel like I've learned a lot. And I just want to say a big miigwech for joining. And I hope you have a lovely weekend. And I hope everyone also has a lovely weekend. I'm like losing my train of thought. But also, where can folks find you? And do you have anything you want to plug at the end of this before we say bye?
Yeah, absolutely. I think whiteribbon.ca, that's a great place to go check out. We do have a really good document, and honestly, you can just Google it, but it's like 10 tips for encouraging healthy masculinities. Great document there. It's just a PDF, but it's on our website too. And Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This has been awesome. Like it's always a pleasure to chat, and yeah, looking forward to connecting again for sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a lovely weekend, everyone, and we'll see you next week we'll see you soon on our next live event. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Bye bye.
Bye.